Just got my notes here, keep me on a short leash. Right, good afternoon everyone. My name's Alex-Currie and I'm a postdoctoral research associate at the University of Glasgow. And my role involves interviewing farmers, peatland restoration practitioners and conservation organisations in the Fife and Humber catchments. The project I work for is called Rapid Engagement with Stressed Peatland Environments and Communities in Transition. The acronym's RESPECT, so you can see where they're going with it. And the point of this project is to generate evidence to support proposals for subsidy policy and governance reform to the UK and Scottish Government. And that's to understand what are the challenges, what are the opportunities, and what are the barriers to integrating peatland restoration into land managed for agriculture. Today, I'll be dedicating this brief talk to the subject of tensions and synergies between agriculture and peatland restoration. And to do so, I'm going to draw from a few different hats. So over the years, I started out working with peatlands as an agricultural contractor, as an upland shepherd and cattleman. And that also involved activities such as draining, liming, reseeding, muir burn and hefting as a form of upland shepherding. And after that I worked for a brief while in in Scotland's Agri-Environment Climate Scheme, and this was on the Isle of Lewis, where I also did my thesis research on peatland restoration and crofting, and latterly my current work at the University of Glasgow. So I've been doing farming for a bit more than anything else, but I've gotten to look at peatlands through a few different lenses over the years. And one of the main areas of interest for me, I guess the common thread across this unusual line of employ, is the opportunities and barriers to integrating peatland restoration into land managed for agriculture. And more specifically, I've also developed an interest between looking at the health and diversity of socio-agrarian systems, cultural systems on the one hand, and biodiversity on the other. So the health of farming systems and the health of the places that these farming systems occur upon. And one of the other areas of interest I've got as well are looking at the common stressors faced by both agriculture and peatlands in a bit of a synchronized kind of way. And also thinking about farming as a place where multiple national priorities are embedded in, and how are these priorities balanced? So the insights and the story, if you will, that I want to reflect on today draw quite significantly from my thesis on the Isle of Lewis. And this thesis examined the opportunities and barriers to integrating peatland restoration onto common grazings. The thesis itself was based on 25 crofters and 25 members of staff from Nature Scott's Agri-Environment Climate Scheme and Peatland Action. And the reason I chose my research site, other than that I really liked the Isle of Lewis, so it was a good take it over for a while, was that I'd worked there in sort of different capacities, because peatlands, the Isle of Lewis has one of the largest contiguous bodies of blanket bog, and almost all of that blanket bog, particularly this research site, is held under crofting tenure. So it was a good opportunity to see how these systems interact. What I found in my research was that key barriers to peatland restoration stemmed from a few different things. So uncertainties regarding the impact of peatland restoration on grazing, uncertainties regarding the definitions and extents of peatlands that varied from one organisation to another, even within the conservation sector. There was challenges in the decision-making processes of, well, how do I weigh this choice up, whether or not to restore my peatlands? How do I make an informed choice on that? There was also uncertainties, this is a recurring word, as you might have noticed, between whether or not to go the peatland action route or the peatland code. But what I want to zero in on a little bit today is there was also tensions between different agricultural and conservation policies, and also tensions between national strategies and market dynamics, and that these sort of converged to create a very complex landscape and the question of, well, where in all of this do I restore my peatlands? And you're probably wondering what that's about. So this is an illustration that peatland habitats, especially in the Isle of Lewis, are laden with a lot of different forms of infrastructure and of socio-agrarian types of land uses. So they're busy places. And this complexity only becomes more so when you factor in the wide range of subsidy schemes and socio-economic pressures that shape these habitats. Yeah, that's the wee peatlands there. So, one of the things that I noticed when I was speaking to crofters quite a lot is that the barriers to peatlands were, or the attitudes or the hesitation to restore peatlands were predominantly attributed to complex sort of interactions between conservation strategies, like we mentioned, and broader social and economic changes. So, for example, rising living costs and competition from mainland feed prices was attributed to a reduction in the macher cropping, or the kind of coastal cropping, which in turn had a knock-on effect of more grazing pressure on the in-by, or the sort of higher value grazing areas. And that this was compounded by a decline in hefting or upland of upland grazing that also brought a lot of grazing pressure down to the sort of the in-by areas. And alongside this change, one of the responses that crofters had to undertake was to extend these sort of higher value pastures into the peatlands. And this was because there was higher densities of sheep than there normally would be. And the sheep were staying in these higher grazing areas for longer throughout the year, or sometimes all round. There was also changes in sheep breeds as well that were no longer suitable to go up to the hill to contend with sort of increasing costs and such like. And the knock-on effect of this was that this new pressure on a system that was not developed to deal with this type of farming meant that led to an increasing amount of draining, reseeding, liming and fencing of the near peatlands, so the peatlands adjacent to these sort of higher value areas. But that also brought another array of problems with it. So these higher densities that have been sort of produced through changes over time also put crofters into a certain degree of tension with their agri-environment climate schemes that were based on certain low grazing densities. So to deal with this, crofters tried to move their sheep out of these in-by areas and into the muirland, which had another knock-on effect. The knock-on effect here is that in quite a lot of cases, the areas that the sheep were sort of hoofed into were also areas that were deemed to be good opportunity areas for peatland restoration sites. But the trade-offs and the sort of barriers to restoring them had increased because sheep had been moved from the hill or the coast into the in-bys and then hoofed out onto the muirlands to try and keep the densities right. Now, to try and avoid this conundrum, quite a few crofters were like, well, we'll try to take them back up onto the hill then. But this also encountered another sort of array of barriers. So there was alleged accounts, for example, of changing predator dynamics from golden eagles and white-tailed eagles, which was attributed to a chronic decline in fish populations, and also myxomatosis decimating the rabbit population. So that led crofters to bring the sheep back down to this area right in the middle that I'm really interested in talking about. And also leading to a loss in seagull management scheme payments and Scottish Upland Sheep Support Scheme payments. So the picture here that I want to talk about is that there's a close parallel between the degradation, sorry, I got there, of peatlands, and the degradation of the kind of socio-agrarian and farming systems on these peatlands. These things are happening at the same time. Now that's an interesting thing from my perspective to note, is to sort of zoom out a bit and see what's changing. That in effect it's a disruption of the human ecologies and high nature value habitats that have evolved over most of the island's settled history. And in effect, the main sort of resistance to peatland restoration was nothing to do with peatland restoration in and of itself. There was no fundamental problem with the concept, but it was trying to fit it into this changing world. Now, when I asked crofters, I was like, well, so what would it take to make peatland restoration fit into crofting in a way that's sort of less, there's less trade-offs? And the almost sort of common or universal answer across those the crofters I'd spoken to, well, it's restoring crofting. That took me a minute to sort of unpack that. I was kind of going through my transcripts, being like, how am I going to make sense of this one? And the general thinking was that by restoring grazing regimes and supporting appropriate sort of breeds of sheep, that would reduce the pressure of sheep across this sort of crofting system at any given point, and thereby reduce the factors driving peatland degradation, and also mitigate perceived trade-offs between, well, do I take my sheep off the land and lose out on my cultural heritage and the economic viability of my croft in order to restore these peatlands, or move away from those dichotomies altogether, wherein in fact enhancing these practices that are linked with cultural heritage might also be closely linked to enhancing the viability of the peatlands themselves by restoring that sort of system of movement of sheep across a larger area throughout the year. So this brings me to my last point. It's a few parting reflections, if you will, over the last sort of 17 years of working with peatlands in different ways. So the first one is that understanding the relationships between low-intensity farming and biodiversity and appreciating the common impact that intensification has on agri-ecological systems is key to developing farming-friendly peatland restoration strategies. And bearing in mind, after all, that most of Scotland's peatlands are found on agricultural land. A second point is that overcoming sort of agriculture versus conservation dichotomies can be done so by addressing the market and political variables driving land use intensification. So saying, well, why is this intensification happening? What is it responding to? And looking at farming as a sort of conduit between broader economic market or political pressures, and starting to look at sort of the decline or the degradation of peatlands due to farming activity as a symptom rather than a cause. And starting to think about things like, well, we need to, if we're going to insulate agriculture from the influences that are driving its intensification, perhaps we should be thinking about ways to insulate agriculture from international competitions. These crofters felt they were competing, for example, against New Zealand lamb. Another point that was sort of quite prevalent in my mind was trying to stabilize fluctuating feed, fuel, and fertilizer prices, as other countries have done to a certain degree, and also critically looking at the impact of supermarket oligopolies on the UK supply chain in driving agricultural intensification. And then lastly, the last point I wanted to make was thinking about adapting conservation strategies to agricultural management regimes, as well as vice versa. So thinking about better integrating peatland restoration into agricultural policy frameworks and also into agricultural management. So one of the things that crofters brought up to me, and I've heard iterations of this today as well, is sort of perhaps thinking about moving away from livestock units per hectare and thinking about the type of livestock. We've got different sheep behave in different ways on peatlands. They graze differently. They traverse peatlands differently. Some go in a row, some spread out. They have different behaviors. They have different weights. And another sort of aspect that came out in my research was thinking about outcomes-based approaches to agri schemes rather than sort of fixed grazing schemes, which would enable crofters to have more resilience and also to adapt to their conditions better. So that in fact, if a crofter who's taken an agri-environment scheme on wants to take on a peatland restoration one 2 years later, they can adapt their management to incorporate that. with greater flexibility. And lastly, looking at the agricultural drivers of peatland degradation as a symptom rather than a cause, enables us to think a little bit more broadly that sustainability lies at the heart of both conservation and farming. And that just as peatlands are part of a wider multi-ecological system, so is agriculture part of a wider national and international supply chain. So, to use a favourite peatland restoration adage, restoration starts at the top and works its way down, and change starts at the bottom and goes on its way up. So, thank you.